Desperate, she offered only her body. The cowboy accepted the frozen Apache woman. The wind whistled sharply, carrying with it the cold bite of winter that seemed to pierce through every layer of clothing. In the distance, the outlines of tall pine trees swayed gently, their branches heavy with thick snow. Among these silent witnesses to the harshness of nature, a young Apache woman struggled through the frozen landscape. Her steps were slow and careful, the snow reaching up to her knees, making every movement a challenge. She had been traveling alone for days, ever since her small village had been forced to scatter due to an unexpected raid. The memories of that night haunted her, the fear, the chaos, and the desperate scramble to escape. She had left behind almost everything she knew, her home, her family, and the familiar paths through the forest. All that remained were her courage, her instincts, and the small pack of supplies she had managed to save. The cold was relentless. Her hands and feet had grown numb, and every breath she took seemed to crystallize in the air. She knew she had to find shelter soon, but the landscape offered little comfort. The plain stretched endlessly, a mixture of snow and sparse vegetation, broken occasionally by frozen streams or rocky hills. She paused for a moment, leaning against a large boulder to catch her breath. Her body shivered, not just from the cold but from the fear that she might not find safety before nightfall. As she looked around, her eyes caught a faint trail in the snow. It was barely visible, just a series of footprints that seemed older than a day but not entirely covered. With a spark of hope, she decided to follow them, thinking that someone else might have passed through this wilderness recently. Perhaps, she reasoned, it could lead her to a cabin, a small settlement, or at least another traveler who could offer guidance. Hours passed, and the trail led her into a denser part of the forest. The trees formed a kind of natural barrier against the wind, giving her a brief respite from the biting cold. Here, the snow was softer, muffling her footsteps as she moved. She spotted small animal tracks, squirrels and rabbits, that hinted at life even in the harshest of seasons. She crouched for a moment, examining the prints, and felt a strange sense of connection to the world around her. Even in this frozen landscape, life persisted, and she reminded herself that she could too. By late afternoon, the sky began to darken with heavy clouds, promising an impending snowfall. She knew she had to find shelter soon. Her eyes scanned the area carefully, and in the distance, she saw a thin column of smoke rising above the treetops. Her heart leapt. Smoke meant a fire, and fire meant warmth and possibly people. Gathering her remaining energy, she trudged toward it, moving faster despite the exhaustion that weighed on her body. As she drew closer, she could make out the outline of a small log cabin nestled among the trees. It was simple but sturdy, with smoke curling from the chimney and a faint light flickering behind the windows. Relief washed over her like a wave, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine warmth, food, and rest. But her cautious mind reminded her not to be reckless. She did not know who lived there or whether they would welcome a stranger. She approached the cabin slowly, making sure not to startle anyone inside. The door was slightly ajar, and through the opening she could hear the faint crackle of the fire. She called out softly, "Hello, is anyone there?" Her voice was hoarse, but the warmth of hope steadied her nerves. After a tense moment, a figure emerged. A rugged man dressed in a cowboy's attire, his hat pulled low over his brow. His eyes, sharp and observant, studied her carefully. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I'm traveling alone," she replied, shivering. "I've been lost in the snow for days. I need shelter." The man nodded slowly, taking in her appearance and the exhaustion etched on her face. He didn't ask many questions. Instead, he stepped aside, gesturing toward the cabin. "Come in. Warm yourself by the fire," he said. His tone was simple, yet it carried a weight of understanding. She stepped inside, grateful for the sudden warmth that enveloped her. The fire crackled in the hearth, and the cabin smelled faintly of wood smoke and dried herbs. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of safety, even if temporary. The cowboy moved around, preparing some food and offering her a blanket. She accepted it silently, wrapping herself tightly, letting the heat seep into her frozen body. As she ate, she noticed small details about the cabin: a bookshelf with worn books, a few photographs pinned to the walls, and tools neatly arranged in a corner. The man, though quiet, seemed skilled in many ways, and she sensed a life of resilience behind his calm exterior. In that simple cabin, amidst the snow and cold outside, a fragile connection began to form between two strangers, one seeking survival, the other offering help without question. Outside, the storm began to fall gently, covering the world in a fresh blanket of snow. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the quiet presence of another human being offered a glimmer of hope. The young Apache woman realized that, despite the dangers and hardships of the frozen wilderness, there were moments of kindness and humanity that could make even the harshest winter bearable. As night fell, she settled near the fire, her thoughts drifting to her journey ahead. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of courage. She understood that survival was not just about enduring the cold, but also about trusting the small, unexpected acts of help that could guide her through. And so, in that tiny cabin among the snow-covered pines, a new chapter of her journey quietly began, marked by resilience, hope, and the faintest touch of companionship in a world that had seemed merciless just hours before. Morning came slowly, breaking through the frosty windows. With soft, pale light, the young Apache woman awoke to the smell of warm bread and the faint scent of coffee drifting from the small kitchen. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the unusual comfort of a safe space. The fire from last night had burned low but still glowed warmly in the hearth, and the cozy cabin now felt less like a temporary refuge and more like a place where she could gather her strength. The cowboy was already awake, moving around with quiet efficiency. He poured some hot coffee into a tin cup and set it beside her before turning back to the small stove where he was arranging food. "Eat something," he said, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. "You'll need your strength for the trail." She nodded silently, too tired to speak at first. As she sipped the hot coffee, warmth spread through her body, driving away some of the lingering numbness from the freezing night. She looked around, noticing small details about the cabin she hadn't seen before: the way sunlight glimmered on dust motes above the fire, the neat arrangement of his tools, and the quiet orderliness of a life built on routine and survival. It was clear that he was used to living in this harsh land, relying on skill, patience, and careful planning. After breakfast, he gestured toward her pack. "You need to restock and prepare for the day. There's a small general store a few miles from here, but you have to move carefully. The snow can hide dangers." She hesitated for a moment, uncertain if she could manage the journey alone. Yet the kindness he had shown her inspired a cautious trust. "I can manage," she said quietly, her voice steadying. She realized that her survival depended not only on courage but also on learning from those who knew the land better. The cowboy nodded, handing her a small map and a simple compass. "Follow the trail marked here," he said. "It'll take you to the store and back before nightfall if you keep a steady pace." He paused, then added, "And remember, don't stray. Even small detours can be dangerous in this weather." With that, she gathered her pack and stepped outside. The snow had fallen lightly during the night, covering the forest floor in a fresh, unbroken blanket. The wind had softened, but the air was still sharp and cold. She tightened the straps of her pack and began walking along the path indicated on the map, the snow crunching softly beneath her boots. As she moved through the trees, she noticed the quiet beauty of the forest. The snow clung to the branches like delicate lace, and sunlight sparkled on the frozen edges of streams. Despite the cold and the lingering fear from her journey, there was a sense of calm in the stillness. She allowed herself to breathe in the crisp air, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Along the way, she encountered small signs of life, tracks of rabbits and deer in the snow, the chirping of a lone bird perched on a branch, and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. Each sign reminded her that even in the harshest conditions, life persisted, and so could she. She moved cautiously, keeping her eyes and ears alert for any potential dangers, but also appreciating the subtle lessons the wilderness offered. Hours passed, and she reached the small general store the cowboy had mentioned. It was a modest building, with snow piled against the wooden walls and a bell that jingled softly when she opened the door. Inside, the warmth was immediate and welcoming. Shelves were lined with essential supplies, dried foods, blankets, lanterns, and simple tools. A few locals dressed in heavy coats and boots were shopping quietly. She approached the counter where the shopkeeper greeted her with a nod. "You're brave to be out in this weather," he said, his voice friendly. "Not many travel alone through the snow these days." "I have to," she replied. "I need supplies for my journey back through the forest." The shopkeeper helped her gather what she needed: dried meat, fresh bread, some fruits, extra clothing, and warm blankets. She felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. Even small victories like gathering provisions reminded her that she was capable and resourceful. As she stepped outside with her pack now heavier but filled with essentials, she paused for a moment. The forest awaited her, vast and silent, but she felt a quiet confidence growing within her. Each step forward was a reminder that survival was not just about enduring hardships, but also about making careful choices, learning from those around her, and remaining alert and adaptable. The journey back to the cabin was slower. She had to navigate through the deeper snow and avoid patches of ice along hidden streams. Her muscles ached from the effort, but the warmth of the supplies and the thought of a safe place to return to kept her moving. Occasionally, she looked at the distant outline of the cabin through the trees, a small beacon of hope in the white landscape. When she finally arrived, the cowboy was waiting near the door. He gave a small nod of approval when he saw the provisions. "Good work," he said simply. "You handled that well." She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a moment to relax, letting the warmth of the cabin and the steady presence of another human being ease the tension she had carried for so long. They spent the afternoon preparing the supplies, storing food carefully, and discussing the routes through the forest. The cowboy shared advice on navigating in the snow, recognizing animal tracks, and understanding the subtle signs of approaching weather. She listened intently, absorbing every word, realizing that these lessons were as vital as food and shelter for her survival. By evening, the cabin was warm and filled with the comforting smells of a simple meal being prepared over the fire. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, but inside, the young Apache woman felt a growing sense of safety and resilience. She understood that her journey was far from over, but with knowledge, preparation, and cautious trust in those who showed kindness, she could face the challenges ahead. As she settled near the fire once more, she reflected on the day. Each step she had taken, from venturing out into the cold, navigating the forest, and gathering supplies, was a testament to her determination. She realized that survival was not only about enduring the harshness of nature, but also about recognizing opportunities, accepting help, and learning from every experience. Night fell again, but this time, she felt a quiet confidence. The forest outside was still, the snow covering the land in a peaceful blanket, and the cabin's warmth provided a sense of continuity and hope. She understood that her journey was only beginning, and the days ahead would demand courage, wisdom, and resilience. But for now, she allowed herself to rest, knowing that each day's progress brought her closer to safety, understanding, and the strength to continue. The following morning, the young Apache woman awoke to the soft glow of the sun filtering through the frost-covered windows. The cabin was quiet except for the occasional pop and crackle of the fire. She stretched carefully, feeling the lingering aches from the previous day's journey, but a renewed sense of determination filled her chest. She knew that staying in one place too long was not safe, yet for now, this small haven offered her a chance to gather strength and plan her next steps. The cowboy was already up, tending to the fire and preparing a simple breakfast. "Morning," he said, nodding toward her with a faint smile. "You'll need energy today. The trail ahead will be longer and trickier than yesterday." She nodded, understanding that he was right. The forest, though beautiful, was unpredictable. Hidden streams, uneven terrain, and the constant threat of sudden weather changes made every step a careful decision. She poured herself some coffee and ate slowly, savoring the warmth and nourishment that helped restore her body. After breakfast, the cowboy handed her a small bundle of extra provisions. "For the road," he said, "and don't worry. The path I marked yesterday continues beyond the store. If you follow it carefully, you can reach the next clearing where it's safer to camp." She took the bundle and examined it. Inside were dried fruits, nuts, and some warm clothes. Each item was a small symbol of the kindness and foresight of someone who knew the land well. She realized that survival was not just about being strong. It was also about learning from others and taking guidance when it was offered. Before leaving, the cowboy gave her a few last pieces of advice. "Keep your eyes open for wildlife. Tracks can tell you a lot about what's nearby, and if the weather changes suddenly, find shelter immediately. Don't take unnecessary risks." She thanked him quietly and stepped outside. The morning was crisp and bright, with the snow sparkling under the clear sky. She followed the trail carefully, marking her progress with small scratches in the snow to avoid losing her way. Every sound, the crunch of her boots, the distant call of a bird, the rustling of the trees, reminded her of the delicate balance between life and danger in the wilderness. As she moved deeper into the forest, the landscape began to change. The trees grew taller and denser, their branches intertwining above to create a natural canopy. The snow was deeper here, and she had to step carefully to avoid hidden patches of ice or thinly frozen ground. Each careful movement tested her endurance and focus, but she felt a sense of accomplishment with every mile covered. Around midday, she reached a frozen stream. Its surface glittered like glass under the sun, and she paused for a moment to catch her breath. She knelt carefully at the edge, scooping some fresh water to drink. It was cold but refreshing, and she felt her spirits lift. She took a moment to look around, appreciating the beauty of the forest. Even in the harshest conditions, the world offered moments of quiet wonder. As she continued along the trail, she noticed signs of animals nearby. A set of deer tracks led off the path, disappearing into the trees. She also saw small birds darting between branches, their calls bright and lively against the silence of the snow-covered forest. These glimpses of life reminded her that she was not alone, and that the wilderness, though challenging, was full of lessons for those willing to observe carefully. By mid-afternoon, the trail became steeper. She had to navigate a series of hills, each step more difficult than the last. Her legs ached, and the weight of her pack grew heavier, but determination pushed her forward. She paused at the top of a hill, looking back at the winding path she had already covered. The cabin was now far in the distance, a faint silhouette among the snow-laden trees. She felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Relief because she had made progress, anxiety because the journey ahead was still uncertain. As evening approached, the sky darkened with the promise of an approaching storm. She realized that she needed to find a safe place to camp soon. Her eyes scanned the area carefully, looking for natural shelter. Finally, she spotted a small grove of trees with a slight overhang of rock nearby. It wasn't a perfect shelter, but it would protect her from the wind and offer some safety from the snowfall. She carefully set up her temporary camp, arranging a small fire with the wood she had gathered. The flames provided warmth and comfort, and the glow of the fire against the snow created a sense of calm despite the growing darkness. She prepared a small meal from her provisions, savoring each bite as she reflected on the day's journey. While sitting near the fire, she noticed the quiet rhythm of the forest at night. The wind whispered through the trees, the snowflakes fell gently, and distant animal calls echoed faintly. It was a stark reminder that the wilderness demanded respect and attentiveness, and that survival depended on understanding the patterns of nature as much as one's own strength and courage. That night, as she lay beside the fire wrapped in her blanket, she allowed herself to reflect on everything she had learned so far. She realized that each day in the wilderness was a test of resilience, patience, and careful observation. She thought about the cowboy, his quiet guidance, and the small cabin that had offered her safety. These moments of kindness and support were vital in reminding her that even in the most challenging circumstances, there were people and experiences that could provide hope. The storm began to fall lightly, dusting the ground with fresh snow. She listened to its soft rhythm, feeling a deep sense of connection to the land around her. Even in isolation, she was not alone. Nature itself became her teacher, guiding her through the complexities of survival. She understood that her journey was as much about learning to navigate the world outside as it was about discovering her own inner strength. Sleep eventually overtook her, the warmth of the fire and the exhaustion of the day providing a deep and restorative rest. In her dreams, she walked through the forest with a sense of purpose, imagining the path ahead and the lessons yet to come. She dreamed not of fear or despair, but of resilience, courage, and the quiet determination that had carried her this far. By the time dawn arrived, she woke feeling stronger and more prepared. The forest around her was calm, the snow sparkling in the early light. She knew that the next day would bring new challenges, but she felt ready to face them. Each step she had taken, each careful decision, and each moment of observation had built her confidence and skill. She understood that the journey ahead required not only physical endurance, but also mental focus, patience, and the ability to adapt to whatever the wilderness presented. With renewed determination, she packed up her camp, carefully extinguishing the fire and ensuring that she left no trace behind. She took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, letting it fill her lungs and strengthen her resolve. As she continued along the trail, she reflected on the lessons of the past few days. Trust carefully, move deliberately, observe constantly, and never underestimate the power of preparation and knowledge. Each step through the snow, each moment of quiet observation, and each challenge overcome brought her closer to understanding the rhythm of the land. She realized that survival was more than endurance. It was a balance of courage, intelligence, and humility. The forest, with all its dangers and wonders, had become her teacher, and she was learning to listen. By midday, she reached a small clearing where the snow was thinner and the terrain gentler. She paused to rest and eat a small portion of her provisions, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had traveled far since leaving the cabin, and though the journey was far from over, she knew she was growing stronger with each mile. As she resumed walking, she kept her senses alert. The forest around her was alive with subtle signs, broken twigs, faint tracks, distant animal calls that required attention and interpretation. She understood that in order to survive and move forward, she had to remain vigilant, patient, and adaptable. Even as evening approached and the shadows lengthened, she felt a quiet determination. The challenges of the forest were great, but her resolve was stronger. Each day brought new lessons, new experiences, and new opportunities to prove her resilience. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to face it with courage, knowledge, and the quiet confidence that she had gained through experience. The morning air was crisp and biting, but the young Apache woman felt more confident than she had in days. Her muscles ached slightly from the long journey, Yet the small victories of the past days had strengthened her resolve. She packed her belongings carefully, making sure everything was secure before stepping out into the snow-covered forest. The trail stretched ahead, winding between tall pines and over frozen streams, each step a test of her endurance and focus. She paused for a moment, looking back at the small clearing where she had camped the night before. The fire was long extinguished, leaving only the faint traces of ash among the fresh snowfall. She felt a quiet pride at how well she had managed the previous night. Every small decision, from choosing the campsite to preparing the fire, had contributed to her survival. She understood that attention to detail and careful planning were as crucial as strength and stamina in the wilderness. As she continued along the trail, she noticed subtle changes in the landscape. The forest became denser, and the snow grew deeper. She moved slowly, her boots crunching in the thick powder, careful to avoid hidden roots and icy patches. Every step required concentration, and she relied on the skills she had been learning from her brief time at the cabin. Observing the environment, reading tracks, and staying alert to the sounds of wildlife. Around midday, she encountered a small stream that had not frozen completely. The water flowed gently beneath a thin layer of ice, glinting in the sunlight. She knelt carefully at the edge, scooping some water to drink and feeling a rush of relief at the cool freshness. Nearby, she noticed tracks of a fox and a pair of rabbits, evidence that the forest was alive and vibrant despite the harsh winter. The sight reminded her that life persisted even in the coldest and most challenging conditions, and that she too could endure if she remained attentive and resourceful. Her progress was slow but steady. Hours passed as she navigated the uneven terrain, sometimes climbing small hills, other times carefully stepping around frozen patches of mud or hidden snowdrifts. She learned to read the landscape in new ways. The way the snow piled against certain rocks indicating wind direction, the subtle impressions left by animals revealing their paths, and the sound of distant trees shifting with the wind signaling changes in weather. Each observation sharpened her instincts and deepened her understanding of the wilderness. By mid-afternoon, she reached a small ridge overlooking a valley below. The view was breathtaking. Snow-covered trees stretched as far as the eye could see, and the setting sun cast a golden glow over the landscape. She paused, taking a moment to rest and admire the beauty around her. Despite the hardships, she realized that these moments of quiet wonder were what made her journey meaningful. The forest was not only a challenge to survive, but also a place of reflection, strength, and connection to the natural world. She continued her journey, now moving toward the valley. The terrain became more challenging as she descended, with loose rocks and patches of slippery ice making each step uncertain. She had to carefully balance her pack, adjusting her footing with every movement. Yet with each careful step, her confidence grew. She realized that survival was a combination of patience, observation, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions. Late in the afternoon, she noticed signs of a possible campsite. A cluster of large boulders formed a natural barrier against the wind, and there was a small area with flattened snow that suggested it had been used recently. She approached cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of danger or recent human activity. Finding none, she decided this would be a suitable place to rest for the night. She set up a small fire, carefully gathering dry twigs and branches that had been protected from the snow. The fire took time to ignite, but she persisted, understanding that warmth and light were essential not only for comfort but also for safety. As the flames grew, she felt a deep sense of relief. The warmth penetrated her frozen clothes, and the flickering light created a small oasis in the vast, silent forest. While tending to the fire, she prepared a modest meal from her provisions. Each bite nourished not only her body but also her spirit. She reflected on the lessons she had learned so far, the importance of preparation, the value of observing the environment, and the necessity of remaining calm and patient even in difficult circumstances. These lessons were becoming as vital as food and warmth for her survival. As night approached, the forest grew quieter and the temperature dropped sharply. She wrapped herself in her blankets, sitting close to the fire. The flames cast dancing shadows across the snow, and she listened to the soft whisper of the wind through the trees. Despite the cold and the isolation, there was a sense of peace in the night, a reminder that even in adversity, there were moments of calm and beauty. She thought about the cowboy and the cabin she had left behind. His guidance had been crucial in helping her reach this point, and she felt a quiet gratitude for the brief encounter that had provided both knowledge and encouragement. She understood that survival was rarely a solitary effort. It often relied on the kindness, wisdom, and guidance of others. As she prepared for sleep, she reviewed the path ahead in her mind. The forest would grow more difficult in the coming days, and the weather could change without warning. But she felt ready to face the challenges. She had learned to rely on her instincts, her careful observations, and the lessons she had been given. She knew that each step forward, no matter how small, was a victory in itself. During the night, she was occasionally awakened by the sounds of wildlife, distant calls of owls, the rustling of small animals in the snow, and the soft whisper of the wind through the trees. Each sound reminded her that she was part of a larger world, one that required both respect and attentiveness. She drifted back to sleep with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the forest would continue to teach her, challenge her, and reward her efforts if she remained vigilant and resilient. The next morning, she awoke with a sense of quiet determination. She packed her belongings carefully, ensuring that the fire was completely extinguished and that no trace of her presence remained. The forest stretched out before her, vast and unyielding, yet filled with subtle signs and clues that would guide her if she stayed attentive. As she moved forward, she reflected on the journey so far. Each day had been a test of endurance, courage, and intelligence. She had learned to read the land, to anticipate challenges, and to remain calm in the face of uncertainty. The wilderness was harsh, but it was also a place of learning, growth, and unexpected beauty. By midday, she reached a small stream that would provide water for the day and a gentle place to rest briefly. She knelt by the edge, cupping fresh water to drink, and allowed herself a moment to appreciate the simplicity of survival, warmth, nourishment, and the ability to move forward. Each small victory, each careful decision, brought her closer to understanding the rhythm of the land and the strength within herself. The afternoon passed with slow but steady progress. She navigated hills and valleys, carefully avoiding hazards and observing the signs of wildlife that indicated safety and food sources. She felt her confidence growing, not just in her physical abilities, but also in her ability to anticipate challenges and adapt to whatever the forest presented. As evening approached, she spotted a natural shelter formed by a large fallen tree and some surrounding rocks. It would offer protection from the wind and snow, and she prepared her camp with care. The fire she built provided warmth and a sense of security, and as she sat beside it, she felt a quiet pride in her resilience. That night the forest seemed peaceful, the snow falling softly around her shelter. She reflected on the journey so far and understood that each step, each observation, and each decision had been a lesson. Survival was not just about enduring the cold and the wilderness. It was about learning, adapting, and finding strength in every moment. As she drifted off to sleep, the warmth of the fire and the quiet beauty of the forest provided a sense of hope. She knew that the coming days would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she had the skills, determination, and wisdom to face them. The journey through the forest was far from over, yet she felt ready, resilient, and more connected to the land and herself than ever before. The morning light crept gently over the snow-covered forest, casting long shadows across the ground and filling the world with a soft, golden glow. The young Apache woman woke with a sense of quiet determination. Her body was tired from the long journey, but her mind was sharp, and her spirit carried the strength she had built over the past days. She packed her belongings carefully, making sure the fire from the previous night was fully extinguished, leaving no trace behind. Each action was deliberate, a reflection of the lessons she had learned about survival and respect for the wilderness. She stepped out into the crisp morning air, the cold biting at her cheeks but invigorating her senses. The trail ahead wound through a denser part of the forest, with trees standing tall and close together, their branches heavy with snow. She moved carefully, using the skills she had honed to navigate the terrain safely. Her eyes scanned the ground for hidden hazards, and her ears listened for the faintest sounds that might indicate nearby wildlife or changing weather conditions. Every movement was deliberate, every step a balance between caution and progress. By midday, she reached a small hill that offered a wide view of the surrounding forest. From this vantage point, she could see the trails she had traveled, winding like silver threads through the snow, and the distant cabin where she had first found safety. She paused, taking a deep breath and allowing herself a moment to reflect. The journey had been challenging, filled with uncertainty and hardship, yet she had grown stronger with each step. She realized that the wilderness, though harsh, had taught her resilience, patience, and the value of careful observation. As she descended the hill, she noticed signs of life around her. Tracks in the snow showed the presence of deer and small animals, and birds chirped softly from the treetops. These signs reminded her that the forest was alive, and that she was part of a larger world that demanded both respect and attention. She moved slowly, savoring the beauty of her surroundings while remaining vigilant. The afternoon brought new challenges. The trail led her through a section of forest where snowdrifts were deep, and hidden ice made each step uncertain. She carefully tested the ground before placing her weight, relying on the balance and strength she had developed over the course of her journey. Despite the difficulty, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Each obstacle overcome was a testament to her growing skill and determination. Around mid-afternoon, she came across a narrow stream that cut through the forest. The water was partially frozen, but there were pockets of liquid where she could drink. She knelt by the stream, cupping fresh water to her lips and feeling the cold refresh her body. While resting, she noticed faint tracks along the bank, small footprints of foxes and rabbits, and realized that even in the harsh winter, life found ways to endure. This small observation strengthened her spirit, reinforcing her belief that she too could persevere through adversity. As the day progressed, she encountered a steep incline that led to a ridge overlooking a distant valley. The climb was exhausting, and her muscles protested with every step, but she pressed forward. At the top, she paused to catch her breath and take in the view. The valley below was blanketed in snow, shimmering under the soft afternoon light. A few scattered trees stood like sentinels, and the distant sound of a stream whispered across the silent landscape. She felt a sense of awe and gratitude. Despite the difficulties, the forest had offered moments of beauty and inspiration that reminded her why she continued to move forward. Descending into the valley, she discovered a small natural shelter formed by a cluster of boulders and overhanging branches. It was perfect for setting up a temporary camp before nightfall. She carefully prepared a fire, gathering dry branches and twigs from beneath the snow. The flames grew slowly, their warmth cutting through the cold and offering a comforting sense of security. She cooked a simple meal from her provisions, savoring each bite as she reflected on how far she had come. While resting by the fire, she thought about the lessons she had learned. She remembered the guidance of the cowboy at the cabin, the advice about reading tracks, and the importance of careful observation. Each day had been a test, not just of her physical endurance, but of her ability to adapt, learn, and remain calm under pressure. She understood that survival required both courage and intelligence, and she felt proud of the strength she had discovered within herself. Night fell and the forest was quiet, with only the soft whisper of wind through the trees and the occasional rustle of wildlife. She wrapped herself in her blanket, sitting close to the fire. The warmth seeped into her bones, easing the ache from the day's journey. She felt a sense of connection to the forest, realizing that her journey was as much about understanding the land as it was about surviving it. Each observation, each careful step, had strengthened her ability to live in harmony with the environment. During the night, she reflected on her journey from the beginning. She had been lost, frightened, and unsure of her ability to survive, but each challenge had taught her something valuable. The wilderness had pushed her to her limits, yet it had also revealed her inner resilience and resourcefulness. She understood that true strength came not only from enduring hardships but from learning from them and growing stronger in response. By dawn, she was ready to continue. The forest around her glimmered under the fresh morning light, and the snow sparkled like 1,000 tiny diamonds. She packed her belongings, ensuring that her fire was completely extinguished, and began moving toward the next section of the trail. Her mind was focused, her senses sharp, and her body prepared for the challenges ahead. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she felt capable and confident. As she traveled, she observed the subtle signs of the land. Animal tracks that indicated where it was safe to step, the direction of the wind carried in the bending of the trees, and the distant glimmer of sunlight on frozen water. She moved carefully, balancing speed with caution, aware that even small mistakes could have consequences. Yet she felt a quiet exhilaration in the mastery she was developing over the terrain. By midday, she reached a larger clearing where the snow was less deep and the terrain gentler. She paused to rest, eating a small portion of her provisions and drinking water from a nearby stream. The valley stretched around her, offering a sense of openness after the dense forest she had navigated earlier. She allowed herself a moment to enjoy the feeling of accomplishment, knowing that her careful planning and perseverance had brought her to this point safely. The afternoon brought further progress along the trail. She encountered gentle hills, patches of ice, and small obstacles that required careful navigation. Each challenge was a test of the skills she had honed over the past days: observation, patience, and determination. She found herself noticing the smallest details: the faint impression of a deer track, the subtle change in the snow indicating wind direction, and the distant sound of running water guiding her toward the next safe point. As evening approached, she spotted a small log cabin in the distance, the same cabin where her journey had begun. Relief and gratitude filled her heart. The cabin represented safety, guidance, and the kindness she had encountered at the start of her journey. She approached carefully, her steps light but purposeful, eager to reach the warmth and shelter that awaited her. When she arrived, the cowboy emerged from the cabin, his eyes reflecting a quiet acknowledgement of her accomplishment. "You made it," he said simply, his voice calm but filled with respect. She nodded, smiling faintly, feeling a deep sense of pride and relief. She had faced the wilderness alone, navigated challenges, and grown stronger through every step. Inside the cabin, warmth and comfort enveloped her. She shared a meal with the cowboy, recounting parts of her journey and listening to his observations and advice. The conversation was simple but meaningful, a reflection of the shared understanding that comes from experiences in the wild. She realized that survival was not only about physical endurance but also about learning from others, appreciating kindness, and understanding the world around her. As night fell, she sat by the fire, reflecting on the past days. The journey had tested her limits, taught her valuable lessons, and revealed strengths she had not known she possessed. The wilderness had been harsh, but it had also offered beauty, inspiration, and the opportunity for growth. She understood that life's challenges, like the forest, required resilience, careful planning, and the courage to move forward despite uncertainty. Finally, she lay down to rest, the warmth of the cabin and the fire offering comfort after her long journey. She closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and peace. The lessons of the forest, the kindness she had received, and the strength she had discovered within herself would remain with her always. She had faced the wilderness, learned from it, and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The night was quiet, the snow falling gently outside, and the young Apache woman slept soundly, knowing that she had survived, grown, and found her place in the world, even in the harshest of winters. Her journey had ended not with fear, but with resilience, understanding, and hope for the future.